That's not.
Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this month's webinar brought to you by RELO Bangkok and AUA Language Center. Today we're very lucky to have with us Rose Graves. She's currently an English language fellow in Malaysia, and she's going to be talking with us today about pronunciation and introducing pronunciation to your classroom. Just a note about housekeeping. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can put them into your chat box. Make sure that you're addressing all participants so we can all see your questions and comments. The webinar will be about 30 to 45 minutes, and we'll have time for question and answers at the end. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rose. Rose, please take it away.
Shoot. Okay, Kelly, hi, thank you. This is Rose. So I am really looking forward to this webinar. I'm looking forward to sharing some ideas about how to teach pronunciation in your class, and I hope we have a fun webinar. So let's get started. And for some reason, sorry to bring up the housekeeping, but I'm having a hard time showing a picture and my PowerPoint at the same time.
So, can you hear me, Rose?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, so you should be able just to go down and put share, and don't worry about your picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on just a second. Okay. Okay, are we all good here?
Yeah, there you go. I can see your screen now.
Okay, great. Okay, so practical ideas for teaching pronunciation. Let me start by quickly introducing myself. My name is Rose, and I'm an English language fellow in Malaysia. So hello, everyone from Malaysia. I'm from Santa Cruz, California, from the USA, and I've been an English teacher for about 16 years now. So I really enjoy this job. So moving on, let's start our webinar on pronunciation by doing a little muscle warm-up. So let's start by working some of our pronunciation muscles. Let's start with some neck rolls and some shoulder rolls. So roll your neck, roll your shoulders, some tongue to nose, some tongue to chin, some tongue to ears, some kiss and smile.
Hey, Rose, I just want to add, having seen this live, doing this with your students is a lot of fun. People love this, and it's so silly.
Yeah. But, sorry, Kelly, I lost you.
Oh, that was just a comment that I had, that I think participants really enjoy doing this, and I think students will too. And I hope everybody from the comfort of their homes right now are doing some kiss and smiles and kiss and white O's.
You feel a little silly sitting alone at your computer doing some pronunciation muscle warm-up in your class with your students. But it's good for us at our computers too. So just to do a little bit more warm-ups here, we're going to go shoulders to ears, ears to shoulders, head to ceiling, head to floor, some ah sounds, and last some ooh to smile e. So ooh-ee, ooh-ee. Okay, so hopefully we're all feeling warmed up with our mouth and neck muscles. Moving on. So I'd like to start off with a question for anyone who's listening. My question is, what methods have you used in the past to improve your English pronunciation? So just take a moment to ask yourself that question. What methods have you used in the past to improve your own English pronunciation? Answers that I've gotten from teachers that I've asked in the past, they've told me that they have done, some of the strategies that they've used have been watching movies, especially with English subtitles. They like listening to music in English as a technique for improving pronunciation. They like watching YouTube videos, and especially YouTube videos about pronunciation. They practice by exaggerating words in front of the mirror and watching the shape. And last, some people say that they use SAMI diagrams or phonetic alphabets to work on their English. And what that is a SAMI diagram is the picture on the left of a diagram of your mouth, and the phonetic alphabet is on the right. So in this webinar, we're not going to talk about these kinds of methods for teaching pronunciation. We're not going to talk about diagrams or phonetic alphabet types of activities. We're really going to focus on short, mostly that you can use in your classroom with your students to practice their pronunciation. So we're not going to work on really intensive self-study type of pronunciation work. We're talking more about fun activities that you can introduce to your students to help them practice pronunciation in your classroom. So let's move on to some of that. And I want to quickly mention that when I talk about improving our pronunciation, there's two different pronunciation. One goal is the goal of sounding like a native speaker. And for me, I don't think that that's the best goal. For one thing, I don't think it's a very realistic goal for any language learners who are not very young children. And it's problematic for a lot of other reasons. What I do think a better goal for pronunciation practice is the goal of sounding like an intelligible speaker. So for me, this is a realistic goal by practicing techniques that improve pronunciation, and especially by focusing on areas that cause problems in communication. So for me, the goal is not everyone should sound like a native speaker. For me, the goal is we all need to work on good communication. That's the point of studying pronunciation. Okay, so moving on. Here's some of the activities that I want to cover in our webinar today. Tongue twisters, you've probably already done. Minimal word stress clapping, rhythm clapping, stress chairs, slap the word, stress mazes, and dictogloss. So these are some of the activities that I want to talk about in our webinar today. Some of these might be new to you, and some of them you might have done before. Okay, another thing I want to mention quickly, my idea of best practice for teaching pronunciation is add a pronunciation activity to any lesson, but it doesn't need to be a long activity. It could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, up to 30 minutes. Do it frequently. So any lesson that you're doing, you can add a small amount of pronunciation practice to the activity, to the lesson that you're doing, and reinforce it in context. So students learn pronunciation together with the content that you're teaching, and always emphasize how pronunciation affects meaning. Okay, so let's start with some minimal pair sounds. My example here is the E sound. So my word here is sheep, and a minimal pair for E, sheep, is ship. So I have two words that are identical except for one sound difference, E and I. So they're minimal pairs. They're a pair of word difference in sound, sheep and ship. Okay, so let's try practicing that same minimal pair with a few more. So on the left, we have the E sound, and on the right, the I sound. E sound words and some I sound words. So we have heat, peat, bead, sheep, meat. And if you're watching this along with me, then please read along with me. And on the right, we have some I sound words, hit, pit, chip, and mitt. Okay, so let's keep on practicing those two sounds, the E sound and with a pronunciation pyramid. Pronunciation pyramid is sort of a fun and gamified way to practice noticing the difference between the E and the I sound. And students usually you really tend to enjoy this activity also. Okay, so for this pronunciation pyramid, we all are going to mentally go to the top of the pyramid. So we're all together at line 1. There's 2 words, there's bead and bid. On each line, I'm going to read only one of the words. While you're listening to me, follow down along with what I'm reading. So I'll read one word from line 1, one word from line 2, one word from line 3, one word from line 4. And at the end, if you followed my voice, you'll end up at a picture on the bottom. So I'm going to do my best to not, when I read really carefully and slowly, it's easy to over-exaggerate the sounds. And then it's really easy, and we all end up pretty easily at the same picture. But what I really want to practice here is not exaggerating the words, but natural spoken English. So I'm going to do my best to read it not slowly and carefully, but at natural speed. So while I read, listen for the 2 sounds, E and I. And with your finger, follow the words down the pyramid, and we'll see if we can all end up at the same picture on the bottom. When we're at the end of the pyramid, if you've reached the bottom picture, that you reach into the chat bar so we can see if we've all reached the same word. Okay, ready to start. So mentally, we're all together on the top. We're all together on the first line. I'm going to read one of those words, and you can touch that word with your finger, and then follow down to the next word all the way to the bottom of the pyramid. Okay, so first word, line 1, bid, hit, meet. All right, was anyone able to follow along my voice and end up at a picture on the bottom?
Rose, could you do it one more time?
Yeah, I can. Okay, so it's a little bit hard to describe without seeing the picture right in front of you. But we're starting at the top line, and as it goes down the pyramid. So you're listening to which of those 2 words I say at the first line, and then following the arrow down to the next word that you hear. And then from that word, follow the arrow down to the next word that you hear. So we all start together at the top, and if you listen to my voice, you trace down to the bottom. Okay, so let's try this again. Let's see if I can remember the same words I did before. So starting at line 1, bid, sheep, meat. All right, was anyone able to reach a picture at the bottom?
Well, we have some differing views. We had zebra and zipper. I ended up at the chicken, but I have to tell you, it cut out a couple times, so that might be why.
That makes it hard. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes it really hard. Yeah. Okay. Well, the correct answer for that one was actually rabbit, but my voice was.
So none of us were correct. Oh,
right.
wait. We had one person get it correct. Never mind.
Okay.
Somebody got it. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent work to the person that got rabbit. But I'd say if only one person got it correct, then the problem was not the people listening, but our internet connection. Let's try one more time. I know it can be kind of frustrating with a bad connection if you can't hear well, but let's try one more time. Okay, so everyone back up at the top, line 1. Okay, here we go. Bead, hit, ship, mitt. All right, how did our sound connection go?
This time it went a lot better. Most people
great.
are saying eraser. We have one CD and the rest erasers.
Okay, so eraser group, so close, very, very close. Person who said CD, yes, excellent work. Answer is CD. Answer is CD. If you said eraser,
wow.
which line do you think you had a problem with? Probably the line that you had a problem with was line. It's a really difficult vowel sound. Okay, but you can see from this example that this is sort of a fun way to practice minimal pair sounds, where you practice listening for which of the two sounds you can hear. When you're doing this in person, I think it's a lot easier than doing it over the computer. But let's try one more. So this pyramid practices the E and the I sound. So it's some difficult vowel sounds, good practice for students. This one practices a different set of sounds. This one is practicing the B, P, D, T, G, and K sounds. You can see they're written up at the top of the pyramid. If you try saying those sounds and holding your hand in front of your mouth, you can feel that they're minimal pairs with air or with no air. So for example, B and P are the same sound, but one has more air. So B, a lot of air. D, only a little air. T, a lot of air. G, only a little air. K, a lot of air. So some of the sounds are aspirated and some of the sounds are not aspirated. So this is a pyramid practice of distinguishing between those sounds: B, P, D, T, G, and K. Okay, so I think this one might be probably about the same difficult level as the previous one. Let's start together at the top line. So line one, we have pill, back, tip, and bud. And did anyone end up at the bottom?
We have some answers coming in. Lots of elephants.
Yay, I'm happy to hear that. The correct, I could not resist because I love elephants, so I can never resist heading toward the elephant when I use this pyramid. Excellent. Let's try this pronunciation pyramid one more time. I'll try to speak a little bit more naturally this time. Okay, so all together, line one, we have bill, back, dip, butt.
Answers are coming in. We've got cat. We've got mostly cats and a duck.
Okay, nice job. So the correct answer for this one was cat, because I can never resist heading toward the animals. But duck is obviously very, very close. For duck, it sounds like you just missed the last line for the final d or t sound, bud or butt. Okay, so the reason that I like using these pronunciation pyramids is pronouncing the word perfectly. They just focus on pronouncing the word differently from similar words. So it's a really good way to practice not perfect pronunciation, but distinguishing similar words. So for me, it's a really good pronunciation to use with students. And of course, another fun thing about pronunciation pyramids, well, one fun thing is that students usually just enjoy them because it's fun to see at the end who got what picture. Is have students practice reading them to each other. So it's not only the teacher at the front of the room, maybe after the teacher does it a few times, have the students practice with each other, which they also really enjoy. And then of course for a pronunciation pyramid, we can substitute any sounds that we're working on. We can change the words easily depending on the vocabulary lists that we're using or the sounds that we want to focus on. So these are only 2 examples with E and I and aspirated and NF. If you do a Google search for pronunciation pyramids, you'll find a lot of examples. Or of course, it's also pretty easy to make your own to use with students. Okay, so I'm a big fan of pronunciation pyramids. It's a quick, easy exercise and students usually really enjoy them. Okay, moving on to our next exercise. Tongue twisters. People have probably used tongue twisters before. You've probably done tongue twisters in your class before, but they are almost, so let's practice this first one. Pretty easy tongue twister. Have you used this tongue twister before? Have you heard of this tongue twister before? Okay, so I feel silly alone at the computer reading this tongue twister out loud, but I hope that if you're watching this webinar, you are reading the tongue twister along with me, okay? All right, ready, let's go. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. And then try it again a little bit faster. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow. Okay. What sounds do you think we're practicing with this tongue twister? Which 2 similar sounds do you think we're practicing? The first one, you can probably tell, is the R sound. We're practicing red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. Anyone able to guess what the other sound is?
We have one guess, which is the D sound.
Oh, excellent guess. That's a great guess.
Oh, and now Kit is adding the L sound.
That's my intention for this tongue twister was to contrast the R sound and the L sound. So you notice when you pronounce the R sound, your tongue is in the back of your mouth. Your tongue is touching the top and the back of your mouth. When you start saying the L, your tongue moves up to the front of your mouth. So when you say this tongue twister, your tongue should be going back and forth, front of your mouth to the back of your mouth. That's why this tongue twister is difficult. So, excuse me, thinking about R and L sound, try saying this tongue twister one more time, really focusing on pronouncing those 2 sounds really focusing on pronouncing those 2 sounds strongly, and ul. So red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. Okay, so I like tongue twisters because, again, they're a good way to practice pronouncing 2 similar sounds. So red leather, yellow leather is a good one that a lot of people know. My next tongue twister is the successful thistle sifter. Has anyone here heard of this tongue twister before? I'm guessing probably not.
Yeah, we're getting no's. I remember before I saw your presentation, I had never heard this one.
Yeah, no, it's not a well-known tongue twister. I did not choose this tongue twister because I liked it. I think it's kind of a strange tongue twister. I chose it because it contrasts 2 sounds that a lot of speakers really struggle with. So the sounds that we're contrasting in this one are as in thin and as in then. Tongue is sticking out of in front of your teeth, and the is you can feel your throat vibrate when you say the with air and the with your throat vibrating. So this tongue twister is a good way to practice the and the sound. So again, you might feel silly, and I feel silly, saying these tongue twisters alone in front of our computers, but let's try practicing this tongue twister, really focusing on those difficult sounds. Okay, here we go. go. Is going to be reading this together along with me. The successful thistle sifter, in sifting a sieve full of unsifted thistles, stuck 3,000 thistles through the thick of his thumb. Okay, let's try that one more time. Let's try this one more time as fast as we can, because tongue twisters are more fun if we say them quickly. The successful thistle sifter, in sifting a sieve full of unsifted thistles thick of his thumb. Okay, so again, we're practicing tongue twisters partly because they're fun for students, they're fun for us, and partly because they're a good way to focus on particular sounds that you want to practice. So again, an internet search for tongue twisters brings up hundreds of different tongue twisters, and you can look through them and find tongue twisters that emphasize the sounds that you especially want your students to practice. So trouble with, it might be consonant sounds or vowel sounds. Let's see. So I have one more tongue twister, and I think probably you may have heard of this one before. Do you know Peter Piper? Anyone heard of Peter Piper before? So what sound do you think we're practicing with Peter Piper? What are the contrasting sounds that we're practicing with this tongue twist? This one is really contrasting vowel sounds. So e, I, sounds, all the vowel sounds. Okay, so let's all practice this. Let's all practice this one together as fast as we can. Here we go. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? Okay, so a good way to practice a lot of vowel sounds. All right, I want to move on to the next part of this webinar, which for me is actually the most important part. For me, this is the most important part of teaching students pronunciation. Okay, so any guesses what this picture means for pronunciation? Here's my example word. So let's try clapping these columns. So the way I clap column 1 is like this. Big clap, small clap. Column 1, big clap, small clap. Column 2 is small clap, big is small clap, big clap, small clap. Column 4 is big clap, small clap. So let's look at the first word that we have. Any guesses which column that word should go into? How many syllables does that word have?
We're getting some 3 guesses and some 2 guesses.
Okay, great, everyone, great tries. 3 syllables, and one of those syllables is a big circle. One of those syllables is a stressed syllable. So if I try clapping it, I know that because it has 3 syllables, it must be either column 3 or column 4. So let's try clapping it both ways. Let's try clapping it as column 3, banana, or column 4, banana. So different ways. Which column do you think it belongs in? Column 3 or column 4? Banana, banana. Which one sounds correct to you?
You've got a lot of 3 guesses going on here.
Yay, I'm happy to hear that. Correct answer is indeed column 3. Okay, so the big circles are stressed syllables and the small circles are unstressed syllables. So let's try one more word. What's our next word that's up there? Which column? And how many syllables does this word have? Any guesses for how many syllables?
People are saying 2.
Okay, great. So let's try clapping it both ways. It's 2 syllables, so we know it must be either column 1 or column 2. So we know it's either create, create, or create. So which column do you think it belongs in? And if you're guessing column 2, you are correct. Answer is create, not create. So stressed and unstressed syllables are the next section we're going to talk about. So what is stress? A syllable that's pronounced longer and louder than an unstressed syllable. Stress is really important in English. It gives a natural rhythm to English. If I am teaching students pronunciation, the fastest way I can improve everyone's pronunciation is by raising their awareness and having them practice stress. For me, it's the most important element of teaching pronunciation. So for me, it's the most important part of my webinar is talking about stress. The pictures on this slide, the sounds are identical. The only thing that's different is the stress. So they're a minimal pair, but instead of having different sounds, they just have a different stress. So to clap them, we would say, ice cream, I scream. Okay, let's practice a few more words. So we don't have to do all of these words. Let's just pick a few words that you want to try. Let's start with, why don't you try clapping the name of the country that you're from? So I'm in Malaysia right now. So I'm going to try clapping Malaysia. And I know it has 3 syllables. So I'm going to clap it as Malaysia. Second syllable is longer and louder. The unstressed syllables are shorter and faster. Malaysia. How about our next word? How about the next word on the list? How would you clap that word? It has 2 syllables. One of them is stressed syllable. Is it stress on the first syllable, Thailand, or is it stress on the second syllable, Thailand? So where's the stress for that second word? Thailand, Thailand.
First.
Excellent work. Yes, great work, everyone. Answer is first syllable, Thailand. So but take a minute to just try to clap through, practice clapping through some of these words. Usually if you practice different clapping, you can hear when you're not saying it correctly. It's really more of an awareness raising for stress than learning stress. So excuse me, I've got a bunch of words that are going to show up on the screen, but please don't clap through all of them. Just choose a few words that you're not sure how to clap and try practicing them. So if there's any word that you're not sure how to clap it, type it into the chat bar and I'll clap it the correct way to show you. So I'm just going to go through a couple unless I hear from anyone watching which words you'd like to try clapping. So for example, in column 2, I have the third word down. I have 40, and the stressed syllable, the big circle, is the first syllable. So 40. If I try it the other way, I can tell that sounds wrong. I can tell the correct clapping is 40. Underneath 40, I have 14. It's almost a minimum pair with the word 40. The sounds are really similar. The only difference is the stress pattern. So the way I clap 14 is the opposite from 40. It's 14, correct. 14. I can tell that doesn't sound right. Not 40, sorry, 40. stress on the first syllable. 14, stress on the second syllable. Okay.
Rose, you have a request.
Yes, please.
Could you clap oil?
That is such a difficult one. I tried to do some tricky words, and you found one of my tricky words. So any guesses from anyone watching? How many syllables does the word oil in column 2, oil, how many syllables does that have? And the answer is 2 syllables. It has
Funny,
2 syllables.
a lot of people are saying 1 and then 2 question mark.
Yeah, it's a tricky word. I put it deliberately on this list because I knew it's a tricky one. It's such a short word, and it looks like it should be a diphthong. It looks like those 2 vowels together might blend into one sound, but it's actually a 2-syllable word. It's actually pronounced oil. And when I clap it, the stress is on the first syllable. So when I clap it, it's oil. If I clap it the other way, oil, you can tell that sounds wrong. So it's not oil. Correct. Oil. Okay. Any other words that anyone would like to have clapped for them? Any other words that you think might be tricky?
Three, 2, 1. All right, no requests, Rose.
Okay, no worries. Moving on. So I do recommend having students practice clapping the words. Okay, we'll clap 1, 2 syllables, stress on the first syllable. Onion. If I clap it the other way, onion, sounds wrong. No, stress on the first syllable. Onion. Okay. All right, moving on to our next slide. So there are some rules about generally ways that words tend to have their stress fall. But I'm not going to spend very much time on this. Nouns tend to have a stress on the first syllable. Verbs tend to have a stress on the second syllable. There's other compound nouns, but they're tendencies. They're not always true. Okay, so I just sort of good things to notice. I do want to mention, let me go back quickly. Oh, sorry. I do want to mention in column 2, I have camera. I hear a lot of people pronounce that word with 3 syllables, camera. But we usually pronounce that word with only 2 syllables. We usually pronounce that word as camera. And we do that because of a phenomenon called syncope, which is that when there are 3-syllable words where the first syllable is a clap and the second syllable is unstressed, often the second syllable is dropped. So all of these words that look like they should have 3 syllables are typically pronounced with only 2 syllables. So all of these words are pronounced aspirin, average, Barbara, business, camera, different, evening, every, family, favorite, federal, general, interest. So it's something that I hear a lot of people not pronouncing correctly. So just something to watch out for, the phenomena of syncope. Okay. So I want to mention this sound. This sound is called schwa, and it's pronounced it's the most common sound in English. And the reason that it's common is that unstressed syllables often change to an sound. So unstressed syllables often So let's look at some examples. Try sitting at your computer now, try practicing saying these phrases and notice that the stressed syllables are pronounced, our clap syllables are pronounced longer and louder, and our unstressed syllables are pronounced shorter, more quickly, and they turn into because they're unstressed, they become So let me go through these quickly. We have a cup of coffee. She was hungry. give them some paper. And last, we have black and white. So those are all examples of the unstressed word in that sentence changing to an sound. Especially notice at the bottom we don't say black and white. We say black and white because it's not stressed. It switches to an maybe go through those later and try practicing those phrases. It's a good way to get used to pronouncing the sound. A couple more examples. Sing a song. I'd love to. I've heard of it. I want to know. She asked me to go. I think it will be fine. And notice that the small squares there are all turning to a. They're all becoming a schwa or a sound. Okay, so I wanted to quickly do some stress timing. So these sentences all take about the same amount of time to say aloud. So we're gonna try practicing out by clapping the sentences. So we're gonna clap one beat for each. So line 1, birds eat worms. Line 2, same speed, same clapping. The birds eat the worms. Line 3, the birds will eat the worms. And line 4, the birds will have eaten the worms. So notice again, those stressed syllables are stronger, longer, and louder, and the unstressed words in those phrases are pronounced really quickly. So for example, that last sentence, will have, turns into pronounce that at a normal speed. The birds will have eaten the worms. So English is really unusual in being a stress-timed language. Most languages in the world don't work that way. So it can be really difficult to learn if you're learning English as a second language. Learning stress timing can be really difficult to learn if it's not how your language works. So I have just a couple more for you to try practicing. Mice eat cheese. So just computer, try clapping that. Give one beat, one clap for each of the blue words and see if you could pronounce those sentences at about the same speed. Even though the top one has fewer words and the bottom one has a lot more words, it takes about the same amount of time to practice each line. Mice eat cheese. The mice eat the cheese. Mice will eat the cheese. The mice will have eaten the cheese. The mice will have been eating the cheese, especially by the end. But it's a good way to practice stress timing in English. And it really adds a natural rhythm to your spoken English. Okay, so I've got a couple more that I'm going to skip over. So you probably noticed unstressed words are function words like prepositions, conjunctions, etc. Stressed words tend to be content words like nouns. Remember, unstressed words are shorter and softer, and the vowel in unstressed syllables often changes to an or e sound. Ideas for how to use these in your class with your students. One thing you can do is take dialogues from your textbook, and when the teacher reads, have students draw circles or underline the stresses that they hear in the dialogue. Then together with the partner, they compare their work, and then they practice the dialogue in pairs, focusing on the stress patterns that they just heard. When I do this with students, I try to remember that the focus is on their speaking and not on correct underlining, because it's really difficult to hear where the stress is. Variation and not one correct answer when the students are marking stresses. What's important is when they practice with a partner pronouncing the stresses. Okay. So here's just an example of a dialogue. I would read it out loud. My students would listen and maybe draw a circle around the words that they think should be stressed, and then compare that with a partner, and then practice the dialogue with each other, noticing where the stresses are. It really makes a difference in students' pronunciation. Another activity that students really enjoy is just a really simple one called slap the word. And for this one, I put similar words up on the board, and I have students come up to the board 2 at a time. It's fun if they have, you see at the top, there's pictures of fly swatters. So if the students have fly swatters, that can make the game more fun. But of course, it's not necessary. It's fine to just use your hand to slap the correct word with your hand. So for example, I would have 2 students go up to the board, 1 student standing on either side of 30. And hopefully, the student that slapped the word 30, 30, the student that slapped that word first would get a point for their team. And then I'd have the next students come up. So a good way to add a little competition to practicing listening for minimal pairs. But of course, you could also use any vocabulary that you're working on in your textbook. Okay, another activity that's hard to describe but easy to play. My students really enjoy this game. So I really recommend trying this. I have students in 2 teams sitting in rows of 3 or 4. And each student represents 1 syllable. So I say the word, and the student with the stressed syllable stands up. So for example, when I say umbrella, the student sitting in the middle, the second syllable, that student stands up, and the other 2 students remain sitting down. And whichever correct pattern first is the winner. And usually the students need to practice clapping correctly before they can figure out who should stand up. I usually have the students work together when they do this, so no one is put on the spot. But as a team, they need to decide together which student should stand up. So for example, when I say adjective, which student should stand up? First student, second student, or third student?
Okay, we've got some guesses. First, second.
Okay, excellent. So it's a hard one, and I really recommend clapping it. It makes it a lot easier. We can clap it as adjective, 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 and the correct answer is the first one. So the person that wrote first chair is correct. The first student would stand up. Adjective. So that's a hard word. I hear that it's a word that I hear mispronounced really often. So let's try one more. My next word is, so which student should stand up when I say that word?
First.
Okay, yay, correct answer is first. And again, when I do this, all my students sit there clapping to figure it out. Correct answer is miserable. Miserable. Yeah. Okay, so just a fun activity that adds a little competition. And students have a hard time the first time we play it, but it gets easier if you keep playing it, they get really good at it. Okay, so let's see a couple more games. Stress mazes are also a fun activity for students. And this one is a little bit difficult to read the words. So stress maze, you start at the first word, and then you clap out the stress pattern, and you move to the next word that has the same stress pattern. So this example it's not showing up on my computer that well. So I'm gonna move on to the next example of another stress maze. Okay, so this one, I think it's a little bit easier to read. It's just another stress maze. So we start with the word important, and I clap it out to figure out the stress maze. Important, so the stress is on the second syllable. I need to choose which of the 2 words that touch important is the right word. And the correct answer is behavior, because the stress is, so now I know that's the pattern. Behavior. I have to find out which word is the next word that has the same pattern as behavior. So after behavior, we have confusion or fortunate. So the correct answer is confusion. Okay, any guesses from confusion? Anyone guess where our next word, which our next word has the same stress pattern? Any guesses where we head after confusion? Literature. It could be abandon, or it could be lunatic.
We've got one brave soul guessing, and they've guessed lunatic.
Oh, so close. Correct answer is abandon. Yeah, it takes a little while. When I hand these out to my students, they sit there and slowly, as they clap through the words, it takes a little while to figure out the stress patterns in each one. But I'm usually surprised by how quickly my students are able to get through. So I'm just going to give the answers quickly instead of making everyone guess the next answers. But again, it's a skill that seems difficult at first, but as you keep practicing it with students, it gets easier and easier. Substantial, advantage, determine, develop, consider. Okay, and here's the answer key. So if you follow the words in red, you can see they all have the same stress pattern, and you get to the end. So again, just a fun stress pattern. And if you Google stress maze, you will find online hundreds of examples. So you don't need to make your own, although if you have vocabulary words you want your students to use, of course you can make your own. Okay, so I want to mention poetry is another really fun way to help students become aware of stress, because most poems have a regular, not most poems, excuse me, many poems do have a regular stress pattern. So for example, this poem, the last stanza on the bottom, the woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. So you can tell when you slowly clap it out with your students, each line has 4 stresses. So it's a fun way for students to gain an awareness of that same stress pattern in English. And it's also a fun way to use poetry in your classroom. So students practice the stress by reciting the poem, and then they can try the stress pattern. That's something that I do only with advanced students. It's pretty challenging for any student that's not very advanced. Okay, songs are another great way to practice stress patterns. I'm not gonna sing this song, but songs that have a strong beat are often a really great way to practice stress patterns with students. So this is just one example of a song that's a good one to practice with students, but any songs that you know and like are great for practicing stress. Dictogloss is another great way to practice listening with students. So for dictogloss, you read a short text aloud to students several times, and the students practice listening to the text, noting down keywords from the text, and then recreating the meaning of the text on their own, just as a listening skill. So it's an activity that can be adjusted for any level, but it's listening practice. And my example here is one that I use with my advanced university students, but you could easily adapt a dictogloss activity for much lower level students with a much, much easier text, maybe something from their textbook, for example. Okay, so to finish up my webinar, why do I think it's important to teach pronunciation? One reason that I think it's important is that pronunciation activities can be added into any lesson that you're doing, pronunciation activity, using the content of any lesson that you're doing. So it's really easy to incorporate pronunciation activities into your regular classroom curriculum. Pronunciation activities don't have to be silly, but often they are, and students tend to have a lot of fun doing them. So they can be a really quick, fun, silly break for students from the rest of the activity that you're doing. Students just tend to really enjoy pronunciation activities. Probably most importantly, pronunciation activities in their own speaking and listening skills. So practicing the skills with students makes students much more confident speakers. I think one of the most important reasons to add pronunciation to our classrooms is to build students' confidence, which of course will help our students become better speakers just through that confidence. And last, I think teaching pronunciation really helps students to communicate in English, and that's our goal as English teachers. So I really recommend teaching. The American English website is a great source of pronunciation materials. That's americanenglish.state.gov. There's materials for all different areas, all different skill areas of English teaching, but the pronunciation materials are my favorite of all the materials on the website. So I really recommend. There's a lot of great stuff on there. Great YouTube videos, great activity guides, just lots of pronunciation materials on the American English website. And that much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed learning about my favorite topic of pronunciation.
Thank you so much, Rose. I think we've had a lot of comments coming in about how much people are gaining from the activities you've presented here. Comments about pronunciation knowledge, being able to help students listen better. So let's open it up. We have a few minutes for questions. If anybody has a question, feel free to put it in the chat box. And we'll keep talking for a few moments here while we wait. Does anybody have questions? Lots of thank yous.
Yeah, well, while we're waiting for questions, I really hope that you are able to use some pronunciation activities in your class. I feel like it can be done very successfully with all levels of students, and any content that you're doing in your class of pronunciation for teachers to do.
Okay, well, I don't think we have any questions, it appears, Rose. So I just want to, again, thank everyone for being here. And thank you so much, Rose, for doing this webinar tonight. On behalf of AUA Language Center and RELO Bangkok, please tune into our next webinar. And you can also follow us on Facebook for announcements and links to these resources. Thanks, everybody, again, and have a great night.